My name is Lemuel. I'm 67 years old, and 3 months ago, I stood in the kitchen I built with my own hands and watched my son look away while his wife slid a stack of papers across the table. She smiled when she said it. That's what I'll never forget. The smile. "Sign this, Lemuel," she said, "or you'll never see Emerald and Lily again." My granddaughters, 4 and 6 years old, the only light left in my life. Everyone in that room thought I was trapped. A desperate old man with nowhere to turn, no options left. They thought the pen shaking in my hand meant I was broken. But here's what Karis didn't know. What my own son Carl forgot after all these years. Poor people learn to survive. And survival means reading the fine print. What I saw in those papers, it didn't just save me, it destroyed them. This is the story of how the document they used to threaten me became the weapon that exposed everything. Their lies, their greed, their secrets. But it's also the story of what happens when you have to choose between revenge and redemption, between destroying the people who betrayed you and saving what's left of your family. I made my choice. You might not agree with it, but you need to hear what happened next. Because what I'm about to tell you, the trap they set, the evidence I found, the moment I turned everything around, you won't believe it unless you see it unfold piece by piece. So here's the deal. Subscribe right now. Hit that button like your life depends on it, because I'm only telling this story to people who are serious, who understand that real justice doesn't happen in one moment. It happens in the details. Hit the bell so you don't miss a single chapter, because if you skip even one part, you'll miss the twist that changes everything. Like this video if you've ever been underestimated, if someone ever made you feel powerless, if you've ever had to fight for your dignity when everyone thought you were already beaten. And comment below, "I'm ready." That's it, just those 2 words. Because I need to know you're with me on this, that you're ready for the truth, the whole truth, not the pretty version. The coffee was still warm in my hand when I heard the car pull up. I wasn't expecting them. Carl usually called before visiting. Ever since he married Karis 5 years ago, everything became scheduled, controlled, managed. But when I looked through the window and saw my son climbing out of his Mercedes, something in my chest tightened. He looked wrong. Shoulders hunched, eyes on the ground. Karis stepped out from the passenger side, perfect as always. Hair pulled back, designer purse. That smile she wore like armor. I opened the door before they knocked. "Dad," Carl said, and his voice cracked just slightly. "We need to talk." I let them in. My kitchen, the one I built in 1984 when Carl was just 5 years old. Every cabinet, every shelf. My hands, my work. The table where I taught him to do homework. Where I bandaged his scraped knees. Where I sat alone after his mother walked out and never came back. Karis sat down first, setting her purse on the table with the kind of precision that made me nervous. Carl remained standing by the door like he was guarding an exit. "Coffee?" I offered. "No, thank you, Lemuel," Karis said smoothly. She always used my first name. Never Dad, never even Mr. Patterson. Just Lemuel, like we were colleagues. I poured myself another cup, taking my time. Years of working factory floors taught me one thing. When someone's about to blindside you, make them wait. Make them show their hand. Karis pulled out a leather folder. The expensive kind, the kind you use for important documents. "Lemuel, we wanted to talk to you about your future." "My future?" I sat down slowly, my knees protesting. 67 years of hard labor leaves marks. "Yes, Carl and I have been discussing it, and we're concerned. You're getting older. This house is so much to maintain. Your finances—" "My finances are fine." "Are they?" She tilted her head, and there it was. The first flash of something cold beneath the polish. "You're living on a fixed income. Social Security and that small pension from the factory. It's not much, Lemuel." My jaw tightened. That small pension, was what I earned after 43 years of double shifts and ruined knees. That not much put Carl through state college when his mother's child support checks never came. But I didn't say that. Not yet. "What's this about, Carice?" She slid the papers across the table. "We want to help you. Carl and I have been working with a financial advisor, and we think the best thing, for everyone, is to establish a power of attorney. That way, if something happens to you, if you get sick or confused, we can make sure you're taken care of." The word confused hung in the air like poison. I looked at my son. He was staring at the floor. "Carl," I said quietly, "you agree with this?" He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there broke something in me. Shame, guilt, but also something else, something that looked like resignation. "Dad, we just want to make sure you're okay. That's all." I pulled the papers closer. Power of attorney agreement. My reading glasses were in the other room, but I could see enough. Legal jargon. Pages of it. What if I say no? Silence. Then Karis leaned forward and her smile never wavered. "Lemuel, we're not trying to pressure you, but you need to understand something." She paused, letting the weight settle. "Emerald and Lily ask about you constantly. They love their grandpa so much. It would just break their hearts if suddenly you weren't around anymore." My blood went cold. "Are you threatening me?" "Threatening?" Her eyes widened, the picture of innocence. "Of course not. I'm just saying that if you're not willing to let us help you, if you're going to be difficult about this, well, Carl and I need to think about what's best for our girls, and maybe having them around someone who's becoming unstable. Maybe that's not healthy." The room spun. Emerald and Lily, my granddaughters, the two lights in my darkening world. Saturday mornings building birdhouses, bedtime stories, their laughter. She was going to take them from me. I looked at Carl. He still wouldn't meet my eyes. My hand reached for the pen on the table. Everyone thought I was beaten. What they didn't know was that my father taught me one thing before he died. When someone's trying to rob you, let them think they've won. Then you take everything. I clicked the pen, and I started reading. They didn't expect me to read it. That was their first mistake. Karis sat back in her chair, Victoria's smile already forming. Carl shifted his weight, anxious to leave, to get this ugly business over with. They were waiting for me to sign on the dotted line like a good, confused old man. But I didn't sign. I read every single word. "Lemuel," Karis said after 2 minutes of silence, "it's just standard legal language. Our attorney assured us." "Your attorney?" I looked up. "Not mine." Her smile thinned. "Well, you're welcome to have someone look it over, but it's really very straightforward." "Section 3, I interrupted. "Financial access and control. This gives you complete access to my bank accounts, my pension, my Social Security deposits." I flipped the page. Section 5, Property management. "You can sell my house without my consent if you deem it in my best interest." Carl finally spoke. "Dad, we're not going to sell your house." Section 7. My voice was steady now, factory floor steady. The voice I used when machines broke down and supervisors panicked. Calm. Controlled. Financial disclosure requirements. Karis blinked. Just once. But I saw it. It says here that any person granted power of attorney must provide full financial disclosure to the principal. That's me, including any debts, liens, or liabilities incurred using the principal's assets. I looked up. "What debts are you planning to incur using my assets, Karis?" "That's just standard legal protection. For me or for you?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Carl cleared his throat. "Dad, I think you're reading too much into—" "Am I?" I set the papers down carefully. "Because this whole document protects you, not me. It gives you access to everything I own, everything I've earned, and requires me to trust that you'll act in my best interest." I let that phrase hang there. But it also requires you to disclose your finances. So let me ask you directly. Do you have any debts I should know about? Any loans? Any liens? Karis's smile was gone now. Our financial situation is none of your concern. It is, if you're asking to control mine. She stood up abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. Carl, we should go. Your father clearly isn't ready to have an adult conversation about this. But I wasn't done. How much? I asked quietly. They both froze. How much do you owe? Carl's face went white. Dad. Because I'm looking at my son, who drives a Mercedes he can't afford, whose wife has a new handbag every month, who just renovated a kitchen 6 months after buying a house. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 67 years. And I'm wondering why you suddenly need access to a small pension and not much Social Security. Karis grabbed her purse. We're leaving. You do that, I said, but let me be clear about something. I'm not signing this. Not today, not ever, not unless I get answers. She turned at the door, and the mask finally cracked. The real Karis showed through just for a second. Cold, calculating, angry. Then I guess Emerald and Lily won't be coming over this Saturday. The words hit like a punch. Karis, Carl started. No, Carl. Your father wants to play games? Fine, but our daughters don't need to be around someone who's paranoid and hostile. She looked at me. When you're ready to be reasonable, you know our number. They left. I stood in my kitchen, alone, listening to the Mercedes pull away. My hands were shaking now. Not from fear, from rage. I looked down at the unsigned papers on my table. Section 7. Financial disclosure requirements. A clause they probably never read, never expected me to notice. A clause that required them to reveal everything. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in 2 years. Perez, it's Lemuel. I need a favor. My neighbor, my friend, my former lawyer. I need you to request financial disclosure on someone, and I need you to do it quietly. There was a pause on the other end. Then, who are we investigating? I looked at the doorway where my son had stood, silent and ashamed. My family. Perez arrived 20 minutes later with a briefcase and 2 cups of coffee from the diner on 4th Street. He'd aged since I last saw him up close. More gray in his beard, deeper lines around his eyes. But when he sat down at my kitchen table and opened that briefcase, I saw the man who'd spent 40 years in courtrooms making corporate lawyers sweat. Talk to me, he said. So I did. I told him about the papers, about Karis's smile, about my son's silence, about the threat wrapped in concern, the way she'd dangled my granddaughters like bait. Perez listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad with handwriting I could barely read. When I finished, he sat back and steepled his fingers. You did the right thing not signing. I know. Do you? He looked at me hard. Because a lot of men in your position would have signed just to keep the peace, to keep seeing those little girls. I almost did, I admitted. The coffee had gone cold in my hands. The pen was right there. I could have ended it, made everyone happy. Everyone except you. I nodded. Perez pulled the power of attorney documents toward him and started reading. His expression darkened with each page. This is predatory, he muttered. Beautifully disguised, but predatory. Whoever drafted this knew exactly what they were doing. He tapped Section 7. But they made one mistake. This disclosure clause, it's mandatory. Once you request it, they have 30 days to comply, or the entire agreement becomes void. Can I request it even though I didn't sign? You can request it as a condition of signing. It's perfectly legal. He smiled grimly. And if they refuse, that tells us everything we need to know. I felt something loosen in my chest. Hope, maybe, or just the relief of not being alone. There's something else, I said quietly. My bank statements. I pulled them from the drawer where I'd been keeping them. 3 months' worth. I'd started checking them carefully after Karis first mentioned helping with my finances last year. Perez put on his reading glasses and studied them. His jaw tightened. These withdrawals, he said, pointing to several highlighted entries. 200 here, 500 there, 1,500 last month. Did you make these? No. Does anyone else have access to your accounts? Just Carl. I added him 5 years ago when I had that surgery. Emergency access only. My voice cracked slightly. In case something happened to me. Perez was quiet for a long moment. Lemuel, this is more than just a power grab. If they're already accessing your accounts without permission. He trailed off, but I heard what he wasn't saying. Elder financial abuse. The words sat between us like a bomb. I don't want to believe Carl would... I know. Perez's voice was gentle. He's your son. But sometimes the people we love disappoint us in ways we never imagined. He closed the briefcase. Let me do some digging. Quietly, I have a friend at the county recorder's office. I want to see if there are any liens or judgments against Carl and Karis's property. You think they're in trouble? I think desperate people do desperate things. And that power of attorney agreement? He tapped it. That's the document of someone who needs money fast. After Perez left, I sat alone in the growing darkness. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat there, in the kitchen I built, thinking about the boy I raised. Carl, at 7, crying in this very chair when his mother left. Why doesn't she love us, Dad? Carl, at 16, showing me his acceptance letter to college. I couldn't have done it without you. Carl, at 28, introducing me to Karis. Dad, she's the one. I know it. When did I lose him? Or had I ever really had him at all? My phone buzzed. A text message from Carl. Dad, I'm sorry about today. Karis is just worried about you. Can we talk tomorrow? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, come alone. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, okay. I set the phone down and looked at the unsigned papers still sitting on my table. Section 7 stared back at me like a loaded gun. Tomorrow I'd find out if my son was a victim or an accomplice. Tonight I'd try to sleep. I didn't. Carl showed up at 9 in the morning, right on time. He looked worse than yesterday. Unshaven, wrinkled shirt, eyes red-rimmed like he hadn't slept either. I poured him coffee without asking. Black, 2 sugars, the way he'd taken it since he was 17. Some things you don't forget. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped him with algebra homework, where we'd eaten dinner, just the 2 of us, for 11 years after his mother left. Dad, Let me ask you something first, I interrupted. My voice was calm. Too calm. Those withdrawals from my account, the ones I didn't make. Do you know anything about that? Carl's face went pale. I can explain. So, you do know. He put his head in his hands. When he looked up, there were tears in his eyes. It started small, just a couple hundred here and there. Karis said it was temporary, that we'd pay it back before you even noticed. His voice cracked. But then her credit cards maxed out, and the home equity loan came due, and suddenly we were drowning. My hands clenched around my coffee mug. How much? Total? From your account? He swallowed hard. About $47,000. The number hit me like a freight train. $47,000. My entire savings from the factory. The money I'd been setting aside for emergencies, for medical bills, for the day when I couldn't take care of myself anymore. Gone. You stole from me. The words came out flat. Dead. Dad, please. You looked me in the eye. You came to Sunday dinners. You brought my granddaughters here, and the whole time you were stealing from me. It wasn't like that. Carl stood up abruptly, chair scraping. Karis said you'd want to help if you knew. that you'd understand. But she was afraid you'd judge us, judge her, and we couldn't. So you just took it instead." Silence. Carl sat back down, defeated. "When did you become this person?" I asked quietly. "The man who stands by while his wife threatens his own father? The man who steals from the parent who sacrificed everything for him?" "I don't know," he whispered. "I don't know, Dad. It happened so slowly. First, it was just letting Karis handle the finances because she was better with numbers. Then it was trusting her judgment about investments. Then it was—" He gestured helplessly. "I woke up one day and realized I didn't recognize my own life anymore." "The power of attorney," I said. "Was that your idea or hers?" "Hers. But Dad, I swear, I thought it was just to help organize your finances, to make things easier. I didn't know about all those clauses until yesterday when you started reading them." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But I'd also wanted to believe his mother would come back. Some once die hard. "There's more, isn't there?" I asked. "What else am I going to find when I start digging?" Carl's silence was answer enough. "Tell me now, son, all of it. Because if I find out from someone else, if Perez digs it up, if it comes out in court—" "Court?" Carl's head snapped up. "Dad, you can't—" "Tell me the truth, and maybe I won't have to." He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "Karis has done this before. To her own mother. 3 years ago, before we got married. I didn't know until recently." He looked at me, and I saw real fear there. "She convinced her mom to invest in some business opportunity. Took almost everything she had. When it fell through, Karis said it wasn't her fault. Market forces. Bad timing. But her mom lost her house, Dad. She's living in a 1-bedroom apartment now." My blood ran cold. "Does her mother know about me?" "No. They don't speak anymore. Karis said her mom was being unreasonable, vindictive. I believed her." His voice broke. "I believed everything she told me." I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Mrs. Chen was watering her garden. Normal life, continuing like the world hadn't just shifted beneath my feet. "You need to leave now," I said without turning around. "Dad—" "Leave, Carl, before I say something I can't take back." I heard him stand, heard him walk to the door. Then, "I'm sorry, Dad. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry." The door closed. I was alone again. But now I knew the truth. And the truth was so much worse than I'd imagined. I called Perez 30 seconds after Carl left. "I need you to find Karis's mother." 2 days later, I was sitting in a small cafe across from a woman named Emerald Chen. Yes, Emerald. My granddaughter was named after the woman Karis had robbed. She was in her early 60s, small and elegant with gray streaks in her black hair. Her hands shook slightly as she stirred her tea. "I didn't want to believe you when your friend called," she said quietly. "I told myself Karis had changed, that marriage and children had made her different. But she hasn't. No." Emerald's eyes filled with tears. "She's doing to you exactly what she did to me." She opened a worn folder and spread documents across the table. Bank statements, emails, signed agreements for investments that never existed, payment receipts for business opportunities that were nothing but smoke. $83,000, Emerald whispered. "My entire retirement." She said she had a friend who could triple it in 2 years. Low risk, high reward. I trusted her because she was going to marry my nephew's best friend, because she called me auntie and brought me soup when I was sick. I felt sick myself. When did you realize? When the payments stopped coming. When I called the investment company and they'd never heard of her. When I showed up at her apartment and she told me I was being paranoid. Emerald's voice hardened. She said I was trying to ruin her relationship with Carl, that I was jealous of her success. By the time I got a lawyer, she'd moved the money through 3 different accounts and claimed it was a gift, not an investment. "Did you press charges?" "I tried. But she had documentation, emails where I'd thanked her for helping me, text messages where I'd called the money a gift for her wedding. Emerald looked broken. She's smart, Lemuel. She covers her tracks. But as I looked through her documents, I saw something she'd missed. A pattern. These dates, I said, pulling out my own bank statements. Your withdrawals started in March 2022. Mine started in March 2025. Exactly 3 years apart. Perez, who'd been sitting quietly beside me, leaned forward. She waits until the previous victim can't pursue legal action anymore. Statutes of limitation, exhausted appeals, moved on prosecutors. His eyes gleamed. But if we can show a pattern of behavior, connect the two cases, it becomes fraud, Emerald finished. Criminal fraud. For the first time in days, I felt something other than despair. I felt clarity. I need to ask you something difficult, I said to Emerald. Would you be willing to testify? To come forward with your story? She didn't hesitate. If it stops her from doing this to someone else? If it protects those little girls from growing up thinking this is normal? She reached across the table and gripped my hand. Yes, absolutely yes. Over the next week, Perez built a case that would have made his former law partners proud. We had bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals totaling $47,000, Emerald's testimony and documentation of an identical scheme. Email records. Perez subpoenaed showing Karis researching power of attorney elderly parents. Credit reports showing Carl and Karis were $127,000 in debt. Purchase records for luxury items bought the same week's money disappeared from my account, but the final piece came from somewhere unexpected. Lily, my 6-year-old granddaughter, called me on a Wednesday afternoon using her tablet. "Grandpa, Mommy said we can't visit you anymore. She said you're sick." My heart broke. "I'm not sick, sweetheart." "That's what I thought. You sounded fine last time." Her little voice dropped to a whisper. "Mommy's been crying a lot, and she had a big fight with Daddy about papers. Are the papers about you?" "What papers, Lily?" "The ones on the table. They have your name on them. Want me to show you?" Before I could answer, she flipped the camera. There, on Carl and Karis's dining room table, was the power of attorney agreement, and beside it, a document I'd never seen before, a deed transfer form, for my house, already filled out, waiting for my signature. "Lily, baby, can you do Grandpa a favor? Can you take a picture of those papers with your tablet?" "Okay." 3 minutes later, I had the photographic evidence that Karis wasn't just planning to control my finances. She was planning to take my home. I forwarded the photos to Perez immediately. His response was one word: "Gotcha." That night, I made a decision. No more investigating. No more gathering evidence. It was time to confront them. But not alone, and not on their terms. I picked up my phone and started typing invitations. Sunday dinner, my house, the whole family, every single one of them, including the people Karis never expected to see again. They arrived at 2 o'clock, exactly as I'd asked. Carl and Karis came first, cautious and confused. Karis's smile was strained when she saw Perez in my kitchen. "This is a family dinner, Lemuel. Why is your neighbor here?" "Perez is family," I said simply. Then Emerald Chen walked in from the living room. Karis went white. "What is she?" "Sit down," I said quietly. "Both of you." For once, Karis didn't argue. Maybe she saw something in my face. Maybe she finally understood that the old man she'd underestimated was done playing defense. I placed the folder on the table, the same table where this began. $47,000, I said, stolen from my accounts over 18 months, unauthorized withdrawals, forged approvals. I looked at Carl. "You admitted it. I have your confession recorded." Carl's face crumbled. I turned to Karis. 83,000 from Emerald. Same pattern, same tactics, 3 years apart. Emerald placed her folder beside mine. "And this," I said, pulling out Lily's photos. "A deed transfer for my house, already prepared. Just waiting for me to sign that power of attorney so you could forge my signature." Karis stood abruptly. "This is insane. You can't prove—" "I can prove all of it." Perez's voice cut through her protest like a blade. "Bank records, testimony, pattern of behavior, and that deed transfer? That's attempted fraud. Add it to elder financial abuse and you're looking at 5 to 7 years. The room went silent. Karis sat back down slowly. "What do you want?" she asked finally. The mask was gone. This was the real woman underneath. Cold, calculating, cornered. "I want every penny back," I said. "Payment plan over 2 years, legally binding. Miss one payment, and I go to the district attorney." "That's impossible." "You'll make it possible. Sell the Mercedes, downsize the house, get a second job. I don't care how. And?" Karis knew there was more. "The power of attorney is void. You never touch my finances again." I looked at Carl. "And you attend financial counseling. Both of you. And if we refuse?" Karis's voice was ice. "Then I press charges today, and you can explain to Emerald and Lily why Mommy's in prison." The fight went out of her eyes. "Fine." Carl was crying silently. "Dad, don't." I held up my hand. "You made your choices, son. Now you live with the consequences. But here's what I'm offering you. A chance to fix this. To be the man I raised instead of the man you've become." I stood up and walked to the window. "I see my granddaughters every Saturday. Non-negotiable. And Karis?" I turned back. "You apologize to your Aunt Emerald, today, and you start paying her back too." Emerald spoke for the first time. "I don't want your money, Karis. I want you to get help." Karis said nothing, but she nodded. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was accountability. And sometimes, that's where healing begins. I'm in my workshop with Emerald and Lily, building a birdhouse. The payments come every month. Small, bitter, but they come. Carl calls more often now. We don't talk about what happened. We talk about the girls, about weather, about anything safe. Karis is in therapy, court-mandated. Whether it's working, I don't know. But my granddaughters are here, laughing, covered in sawdust, and I still have my home. I look at the birdhouse taking shape in Lily's small hands. "Grandpa," she asks, "why do birds need houses?" "Same reason people do, sweetheart. Everyone needs a place where they're safe, where nobody can take it away." She nods, satisfied. I teach them to sand the wood smooth, to check for splinters, to build something that lasts, because that's what survival looks like. Not revenge, not even justice. Just this, teaching the next generation that love doesn't mean surrender, that trust must be earned, and that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand your ground and refuse to disappear. That's my story. The woman who tried to erase me learned that I'd spent 67 years being underestimated. And I was done. Your turn now. If this story changed how you see family, betrayal, or fighting back, subscribe. Smash that like button if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity. Drop a comment telling me, what's the one boundary you need to set this week? I'll read every single one. And share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been made to feel small, someone who thinks they're trapped. Because you're not trapped. You're just waiting for the right moment to remind everyone exactly who you are. Now, go prove it.